Okay, it's time to get a little urban. This is part 3 of my CD haul. And this box is a little more, let's just say, more urban music, more hip hop, more R&B, more stuff that I was buying a little bit earlier in my music collection days. And it's another mix of things as well. So this is probably the biggest box I have. So let's get to it. First off, we have Jadakiss, The Kiss of Death. Probably one of my favorite hip hop albums. All this stuff, well, most of it, not all of it, I bought when it came out. Man, I memorized every lyric to this album. I was like, Jadakiss was top of his game on this album. Probably his best album. 2004 classics like What You So Mad At with Time's Up with Nate Dogg, Why, By Your Side. Jadakiss was killing it. Here's another album. Ice Cube, Laugh Now, Cry Later. This came out in 2005. Ice Cube, probably either my favorite or my second favorite rapper. One of my favorite rappers of all time. This is not one of his best CDs. Came out, this I think was his first independent album. I was in high school. I remember I told my friend, hey, could you get me this album? Ice Cube, he worked at Meyer at the time. Came to school the next day. Now how he got it, I can't say whether he bought it, but he had it for me the next day. Every CD has a story. The Game, the documentary. Is this a classic hip hop album? I would say so. For somebody who was growing up at the time, 2005 in high school, I would consider it a classic album. His really only good album, in my humble opinion. But, Hate It or Love It, West Side Story, How We Do. Great album. Dr. Dre and 50 Cent. Can't go wrong. Next we have Bobby Brown. This is Bobby Brown's debut album. A lot of people think It's My Prerogative or Don't Be Cruel is my debut album. He actually had one before this. This is when he first split up with New Edition, and there's some classics on here. Bobby Brown was tight, man. He was king. He had the little crown right here. I mean, he was one of the kings of R&B before, other folks came along. But it's a good album there. Another one of my favorites. Step back, I used to buy greatest hits, especially when artists were around a little bit before my time. And before I was listening to music, I would buy their greatest hits, try to get a collection of their songs. And SWV, definitely one of my favorite female groups. Coco, underrated singer. This has, the greatest hits, Weak, Everybody Loves Weak right here. And one of my favorite R&B songs, not a classic because it's so unknown, but one of their best songs, Mystery. And this was sometimes when artists would drop a greatest hits, they would include a song that was either unreleased or they were release a new song for that album. And this one was for that album, Mystery. Love their style, man. It was so fly. Perfect time for this December. Perfect CD for this time of year. Actually, I might pull this out. Vince Guaraldi. The Charlie Brown Christmas. Classic. Nas, The Lost Tapes. Bought this in 2002, y'all. When it came out, play this out. My jaw dropped in 2002. My jaw will drop now in 2022 if I put this album on. 20 years. It's been 20 years, y'all. Where's the time gone? Where has the time gone? Greatest hip hop album from my Another one of my favorite rappers, NAS. Songs in the Key of Springfield. This is another classic. Simpsons had a couple of like CDs, songs from the TV show, but this came out in '97. This has all of the great original songs from The Simpsons. If you're a Simpsons fan, which I am, and I was back then enough to buy the CD. Actually, I remember where I bought this. I bought this, The Borders, on State Street in Chicago. Every CD tells a story. Gotta clean the dust off. This is the Black Album by the one and only Jay-Z. I bought this when it came out, 2003. At the same CD place, not at the same time, but the Black Album. It came with this little card, Rockefeller Records, introducing Cameron. Who's this guy? Kanye West. See if he'll focus. I don't know if he'll focus. But Memphis Bleak, Dirt McGurk, who was Old Dirty Bastard, State Property, Young Guns, Juelz Santana. But this is one of Jay-Z's, not my favorite, close to being my favorite Jay-Z album. Every CD tells a story. I remember my uncle, for some reason, if you're from Chicago, if you're not, dropped us off. We had like parked in Cabrini Greens for some reason. And like we took the bus down Division Street. No, actually, I bought this CD at the Borders Water Tower Place. That's where I bought that one, not on State Street. Another hip-hop classic. It was a time where I was trying to consume the classics in Too Short Dogs in the House. 1990, probably my favorite Too Short album. Very funky, a lot of funky classics. The Ghetto, just a classic. This has Gerald Levert on vocals. Oklatown. Another West Coast classic. A lot of West Coast. I'm a big fan of West Coast hip-hop. Second album for West Side Connection, Terrorist Threats. This came out in 2003. Gangsta Nation. Ice Cube, Mac 10, Dub C. Big Ice Cube fan. I have all Ice Cube's albums too. War and Peace. When I bought this album, I was disappointed at the time because Ice Cube, he changed his style and flow up a lot. And when he came out with this album, he was moving kind of away from the real like gangster stuff and more into like the pop. I mean, he always kept it gangster, but I was like, what is this at the time? But this album still holds up today. It kind of holds up today more than it did then in a certain extent. It had like features like Korn on here, like the rock band Korn. And Ghetto Vet is a classic. Another classic album. I wouldn't consider that a classic, but this is a classic for sure. Public Enemy. Takes a nation of millions to hold us back. The Bomb Squad produced this. Came out in '88. The greatest albums of all time, not just hip-hop. And a classic from my era. And when I say my era, I'm talking about like the early 2000s, late 90s, when I was kind of like really coming to like my musical senses, mostly hip-hop at the time, but Cameron, Purple Haze. Hate 'em or love 'em, I love 'em. Cameron, I bought this at, what was the name of that record store? Oh man, Coops Records. If you're from Chicago, you know Coops Records. 87th Street, one of the old local record shops back in 2004. I remember this. Oops. Okay, we got some clunky stuff. These CDs are so old. Like I lost the back. Some of the CDs are misplaced, but the case is all broken up. But I bought this when it came out. No, this was my dad's CD. Lauryn Hill, The Miseducation. Consumed the heck out of this. Played this so much. I don't think this had the lyrics. Some of the booklets would have the lyrics in there, but let's open it up. And y'all remember this? We used to love this stuff, boy. think it's one album of the year in '98. Kirk Franklin, the New Nation Project. Just had Revolution on it. This when Kirk was like just, yeah, he still had his, this is before plastic surgery, but some classics on here. Yeah, we was rocking Kirk Franklin back then. And this is the back. I don't know, is the front in here? I don't know if I had a front, but here's the back to Miseducation. Y'all remember that with the pencil? It's classics, man, classics. Remember when this came out, 2001. Remember, this is Alicia Keys' debut album. I used to love this stuff. Well, she had back then, I feel so old. I sound old. Back in the day, music, they don't make music like this no more. Girlfriend, remember Girlfriend? Y'all remember this album? You should, it had the Old Dirty Bastard sample. Oh, I'm gonna play that song on Spotify when I get off here. That was my favorite song on that album. Here's the front. Alicia Keys, Song that's in a minor. Jamie Foxx, Unpredictable. I was disappointed with this album when it came out, because like Jamie Foxx has a really great voice, but he wasn't really singing like that, and there was no ballads on this album, so it was kind of like, I expected some, like, you know, it was no albums of him at the piano just singing. So, but it had some good stuff. Okay. Now this one right here is probably one of my first CDs that I bought. CDs, because before this was cassettes. Big Willie style. Will Smith. I had to write my name on it. This goes so far back. I used to have to play this on my PlayStation, because I didn't have a CD player. But this was hot, man. This was hot. You getting jiggy with it? Miami, party in the city where the heat is on all night and early morning. I'm going to Miami. Miami. Oh, that was my first Spanish lesson. Let's see what we got up here. Okay, so we got this one right here was probably actually like my first another one of my first CDs. This was still in good condition, y'all. Jay-Z, The Blueprint, probably his best album. The CD's still in here. Nah, the CD's not in here anymore, but this is evident because I don't have, this is the edited version. I couldn't buy the explicit version back then, so I had to listen to it bleeped out. But man, this, you talk about a classic right here, boy. Some of these CDs, like, you know, they just bring back memories and times and that era. Like, you can almost bring back like smells and scents. Nostalgia of listening to this kind of hip hop, man. You know, it's crazy back then. Then we have the Blueprint 2. Yeah, this is it, the Blueprint 2, which was, you know, just another, I wouldn't consider this a classic, but it had some classics on it for sure. Oh, Jay-Z, this was a double CD, came out 2002. And this one right here, this baby right here, I'm sure this was my CD. I played this CD to death, man. This is a classic unsung soundtrack from the 90s. From an unsung movie, or not an unsung movie, but a classic movie, The Wood. Had a mix of new songs, classics. A lot of these soundtracks back in the 90s would have like older songs on it, and that's how it like get put up on like older artists. Because this had Houdini, some Luther Vandross on here, but the songs that I was just so in love with was the Mystical and Outkast, Neck of the Woods. You had Joe's I Want to Know. A lot of times artists would have a single on a soundtrack to promote the single, and then had a single on the album as well. Too Short, Still Struggling. Love that song. Ahmad, Back in the Day. Great stuff. I heard that song on a commercial. I was like, man, I remember that. It took me back. But Bad Boy 10th anniversary. So this came out like 2004, I think. Yeah, 2004. This had all the classic Biggie, Puff Daddy stuff on here. You know, I think it came with a DVD. Up. Bad Boys. They just did their 20th anniversary. So that just kind of shows where time is going. Speaking of Bad Boy, got the classic here, Life After Death. Notorious B.I.G. Man, probably just ahead of his time, gone too soon. And it's just his flow back then, man. Like, you can hear a lot of rappers' flows today as far as like the metaphors and like implementing like punchlines and stuff in their lyrics and things like that, and just being like real catchy with his lyrics. Biggie was ahead of his time. A lot of rappers, they don't know it, but they inspired by what Biggie was doing 25 years ago. And this, I got this sitting on top. I might pull this out since it's the holidays. SWV, Special Christmas. Nice little CD. What we have here. Yes, it's another old school compilation I bought. Dancing Machine, Moving Violation, the Jackson 5. Love Michael Jackson. Love the Jackson 5. This is their last 2 albums, I think. Yeah, this, you know, you got Dancing Machine, you got I Am Love, Moving Violation, Forever Came Today. Man, Michael was just killing it. Remember this CD, The Dog Pound, 2002. Came out in 2002, bought it in 2002. Ooh, I bet you if someone approached you yesterday to tell you that you would be jamming, you would not believe it because you never thought that you'd be jamming. Stevie Wonder, Musicarium, classic, probably one of the greatest hits of all time. You know, 1982, Master Blaster jamming. Boogie on Reggae Woman, That Girl, Do I Do. Love Stevie. This is Jamie Foxx and the Kirk Franklin. He's the back of those 2 albums I showed earlier. You see these scratch to death. What else is in here? Another Simpsons album. This was not as good as the first one I showed, but had some other stuff on here. This wasn't as great as the songs in the Kia Springfield one, but Doggy Style, Snoop Dogg, had to have the classics in here. Love Snoop, love Big Snoop Dogg. This came out, bought this when it came out, Ego Trippin'. I'm gonna say this is, because he was on a roll, he was like on a 4-album roll, and this is when it kind of like slid off. And you know, Snoop drop albums all the time, but this is when he hooked up with DJ Quick. Was it DJ Quick? I forgot who the other 2 producers was on that, but it was like this had, you know, Sexual Eruption. It was cool, all right. This I remember. I would consider this a classic. Rhythm and Gangsters, when he was really working with the Neptunes and Pharrell. This guy dropped it like it's hot on it. And man, I remember playing this. Came out in 2004. I was in high school. Love it. What else is in here? This is some real old stuff right here. WWF, The Music Volume 4. When did this come out? 1999? Yeah, I used to love playing this, man. I was big in the WWF back then. Chris Jericho had Stone Cold's theme on here, The Rock. I know this ain't the only one. Yep. Remember, this was like my friend's album, and he let me borrow it. No, I didn't give it back. You know how that went. This had, this was a compilation of the little WWF things, wrestling themes. Dr. Dre, The Chronic, another classic to clean the dust off. Sonically, before this album, the dust, it's getting in my nose. There was nothing like this in hip hop, sonically speaking. Like, Dr. Dre really changed the game with that album. I love The Chronic. This goes back even further. Speaking of wrestling, WWF. This is The Music Volume 3. This came out in 98. Bought it in 98. It just had Rock, Stone Cold, Degeneration X. Is the Music Volume 5. It's big wrestlers there. I had to write my name on it so nobody wouldn't steal it. Love this album. SWV, The New Beginning. Classic. Use Your Heart's on here. Great album, great album. What else we got? The Jackson 5. This has, you know, the other compilation were their last 2 albums, and this was their first 2 albums. Diana Ross presents the Jackson 5 and ABC. Look at Michael. Looking like, man, I hope Joe don't beat me tonight. Oh, let's see, what else we got here? Run DMC's Greatest Hits. I think somebody gave that to me. The old Kanye. Late Registration. You know I was bumping Kanye back then. 2004, and then College Dropout. 2003. It's classics. What can you say? I do not endorse any of the opinions expressed of the artist that I am showing. And then, you know, another classic. He was on a run back in Graduation, 2007. I remember where I bought this. Sam Goody. Evergreen Park. Ice Cube, Lethal Injection. Another classic. Best DJ Quick. DJ Quick doesn't get his flowers, man. He was one of the great producers. Everybody know about Dr. Dre, but DJ Quick was... We got the Predator, Ice Cube. I got all Ice Cube CDs, man. I love Ice Cube. I used to kind of, when you mad, this kind of album you play. You mad, you play Ice Cube. Or you working out. This is what I play. Yeah, death certificate. Somebody say, hey, list your top 5 favorite hip hop albums of all time. This is on here. This is on here. Man, Cube was dropping that knowledge back then. This is another knowledge. Speaking of knowledge droppers, Nas. Untitled, 2008. I love this album. Love this album. Another Snoop classic here. The Blue Carpet Treatment, 2006. Probably one of his best CDs outside of Doggy Style. The Blue Carpet Treatment, man, this was fire. I feel like this. Trying to see that am I missing anything? Am I missing anything? Because I know I had more. I definitely have more, so it might be a part 4. Because I'm definitely missing CDs that I know I had. But, you know, stuff gets lost. You know, hopefully, oh snap. These definitely aren't mine, but I might as well do it since we're here. Some old 45s. And these are like originals. These are here like since the 70s. Whenever they came out. Zap. More bounce to the ounce. Do You Dance. Is this Roger? No, Rolls Royce. The Gap Band. Casablanca. Tear the Roof Off. Parliament. You would see the record labels back in the day before you would see anything else. Barry White playing Your Game, Baby. Your Game, Baby. John Handy. Actually, I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with this record, but so that's all for this box. Thank you for watching. If you're watching, if you stayed for the whole video, let me know in the comments if any of these are your favorites. If you have any of these CDs, they brought back some memories, and hope you enjoyed the haul. Thanks for watching.